We now return to Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. There's going to be a lot to cover today because I've decided to cover 2 gyms in a single video. I just thought one gym wouldn't be enough to make for a very long video, but maybe that was not a smart decision because I've wound up with a 46-minute video anyways. Anyways, to start off today's episode, we are in the Ilex Forest, just to the west of Azalea Town, and what we have to do here is find a lost Pokemon, which turns out to be a Farfetch'd. So these guys were using a Farfetch'd to cut down the trees for charcoal? Like, really? You couldn't think of any other Pokemon that would be better for cutting down trees? And if losing one Pokemon is enough to tank your entire business, why wouldn't you just capture a couple more Pokemon? Like, there's a bunch in this very forest that you could capture, and you'd be able to teach them how to cut, because cut is an HM, you can use it as much as you want, and there are a lot of Pokemon that can use it. And I'm probably just making too much of a mountain out of a molehill here, but the way that puzzle works is that you have to approach the Farfetch'd from the direction opposite to which you want it to move, so by approaching it from the north, it moves south every time. It makes the puzzle way easier. Like, if you accidentally chase it into another part of the forest, it's going to be very annoying to try and get it back to where you want it to go. This safe return of Farfetch'd will earn you HM01, which of course teaches Cut just like it did in the previous generation, though this time you need the gym badge from Azalea in order to use it, which implies that these guys also beat Bugsy? I mean, it's not hard. They probably even used Farfetch'd in order to do it. No wonder they were using a Farfetch'd in order to cut trees. In my case, I'm going to be using the newly caught and raised Bellsprout in order to cut trees. As I mentioned, I trained this one off-screen in order to make up for not using it in the previous video. And Bellsprout's pretty good. It's got sleep powder, which is really helpful. Remember that shrine, by the way, will be coming back later. So, funny story about this forest. In Gold and Silver, there are a bunch of hidden items and dead ends that are invisible until you pick them up. But in Crystal version, not only have the items changed, but they're also visible, like regular items. It's really weird, I don't know why they made that change. So one item you can find in this forest, given by this guy, is TM02, which teaches Headbutt. Headbutt was a move in Generation 1, but it's been given a new function in Generation 2. It is now an out-of-battle move that can be used on those tiny little trees that you see to shake Pokemon out of them. In other words, headbutting is basically another form of fishing, although this time around, if you headbutt at certain times of the day, the Pokemon that comes out can sometimes be asleep. I don't know what determines that, but I do know that headbutting is going to be very annoying for people who want to complete the Pokédex, because not only is there a different headbutt encounter table for every area with such trees in it, each individual tree is randomly determined to either have no encounters, common encounters, or rare encounters based on the trainer's ID. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, every copy of Gold, Silver, and Crystal is personalized. Which is actually pretty funny because they've stated in interviews that they wanted to do this kind of thing back in Red and Blue, but they decided not to. Oh, but they got their chance to try it in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Oh yes, and there's also a hidden full heal behind the well. I forgot that the last time. I didn't look up where every hidden item was, okay? So, in order to figure out that this one specific tree that I'm looking at right now was the only tree in Azalea Town that was going to give me the rare encounters, I had to use a calculator tool online. You just punch in your trainer ID and then it takes care of the rest for you. You can look up where every type of tree is going to be in every area of the game. And luckily for me, I got the rare encounter for this area on the first try. Pineco is a new bug type that Bugsy really should have been using. I don't know how he didn't have this. It's an interesting Pokemon because it has Self-Destruct, which makes capturing it even harder if you get unlucky, and it has Protect, a move that will cause all attacks against you to stop working. I mean, there's probably something that hits through Protect, but I don't really know all of them by heart. So that's the only Johto Pokemon you can find in that tree. Well, I can find in that tree. You probably have to look somewhere else. So let's check in with Chris. It seems that Chris has walked enough steps to hatch the egg she was carrying. And what will the mysterious new Pokemon inside the egg be? It's a Togepi, which is a Pokemon that we saw in the anime long before Gold and Silver actually came out. So that's a point of interest. Unfortunately, it hatches at level 5, so in terms of combat, it's really not that useful unless you put some serious leveling work into it. But I suppose we better let Professor Elm know that Togepi has hatched. You want me to actually show it to you, Professor? I would have to walk all the way back to New Bark Town in order to show it to you. Well, I guess I've got no choice. And it's just as well because I can pick up a couple of things I missed. So this guy right here, he would normally stop you from advancing if you do not have Violet City's gym badge. And if you talk to him after getting said gym badge, you receive the Miracle Seed, which is an item that passively boosts a Pokemon's grass-type moves. This is a natural fit for Chikorita and its evolutions, and the Miracle Seed is also not a consumable item, by the way. It will passively boost grass moves as long as it's held by the Pokemon using them. Granted, it's only a 10% boost, which is really not that much, but hey, it increases the damage of Razor Leaf. Razor Leaf's got a high critical hit rate. I'm all for it. We also have a secret Hyper Potion behind the cut tree. Again, I did not look up where this was. I just instinctively thought that there would be an item in that dead end, and I was right. So, I was using the calculator tool to find where the other rare encounters were going to be, and I looked all over the game and found that with my trainer ID, the only place I was going to find the remaining rare Johto Pokemon that you get from headbutting trees was all the way back at Route 29 at the beginning of the game, so I had to backtrack all that way in order to find an Aipom. Aipom is a new Pokemon with a couple of interesting new moves, however I don't think we'll get much use out of them because a thing that's kind of a problem with the new Johto Pokemon is that sometimes they have a new gimmick that will be interesting, but generally they don't have the stats or the movesets to back them up. We're still kind of in the era where the Pokemon design isn't very good. It relies on you augmenting the movesets with TMs and HMs in order to make some Pokemon really, really good at what they do. The last new Pokemon you can find through headbutting is Heracross, a very interesting new bug type that is part fighting type, which means it's double weak to flying attacks, so I kind of understand why they didn't want to give one to Bugsy. Still, I think Heracross is one of the more interesting Johto Pokemon, so I'm going to try to use him as much as possible. I definitely have one use for him in mind. Meanwhile, Chris has returned to New Bark Town, and is going to show Professor Elm the newly hatched Togepi. I think you have to have Togepi in your party for this. It would make no sense if you didn't need Togepi to get this event, but I guess you could show him the Pokedex entry? Ah well. Professor Elm has a reward for Chris, and it is an Everstone, an item that causes Pokemon to not evolve so long as they hold it. I don't really know what the purpose of such an item is, and it's a really lame reward, so thanks a lot, Professor. So Gold has returned to Azalea Town, and you can actually get an additional reward from the guys you returned the Farfetch to, but you have to talk to the little boy in this house. And he is going to give us Charcoal, which is an item that boosts the power of Fire-type moves of the Pokemon that holds it. Since Gold has a Quilava, this is actually perfect for him. You know, there's an awful lot of items in Generation 2 that you get just from talking to random people. I mean, there's no real way to know that you can get a Charcoal from this guy just by talking to him. So I think it's one of the very easily missed items, especially since Charcoal is also available at the shop for a very high price. And here we have another example of such a thing. This lady here will give you the TM containing Sweet Scent. Sweet Scent is a move that in battle will lower the evasiveness of the enemy, making them easier to hit, and outside of battle you can use it to trigger an encounter at will. Unlike some of the later generations, using Sweet Scent to trigger an encounter doesn't really do anything special, so I don't know why you would need it. The encounter rate is high enough as it is. Anyways, Silver here is going to capture a Drowsy. Remember, I don't show myself capturing any Kanto Pokemon unless it becomes significant later, and the significance of capturing a Drowsy will become clear very shortly. In the meantime, notice that they actually fixed the relation between Ghost moves and Psychic types. Ghost moves are now super effective against Psychic types as they were always meant to be. Unlike in Generation 1 where they made a typo and caused Ghost moves to do 0 damage to Psychic types. They're learning. Now then, I'd like to address something that I completely forgot about in Generation 1 because I don't think anybody would think to try this without looking it up first. So, did you know that you can use the HM move Cut to cut the grass you find wild Pokemon in? You know, in case you want to avoid random encounters completely. And this works in Generation 1 as well. Turn your Game Boy on and try it. I have no idea how I forgot to talk about it. So, in this area on Route 34, you can find the daycare, which now takes 2 Pokemon, and while they are in the daycare, they can do some things. On Route 34. Suffice to say, I would like to talk about breeding later, but I would actually like to address at this moment the odd egg that I just received. This is an item that is only available in the international versions of Pokémon Crystal. In Japan, they had this whole mobile phone network that you could connect to and trade in battle, and they distributed some items on that service, the odd egg being one of them. Of course, that service is no longer around, so outside of Japan you can get the odd egg, and inside Japan you can't. So in a way, the joke's on them. But in all seriousness, we couldn't have gotten access to that mobile phone network anyways, because back then Japan's phone system was incompatible with the rest of the world's. Still, it does mean Pokémon Crystal was actually kind of a bigger deal in Japan than the international audience gave it credit for. At any rate, we've arrived in Goldenrod City, and oh boy is there a lot to talk about. There is so much going on in this one city, it's crazy. Goldenrod City is the equivalent to Celadon City from the previous game, so it's got the department store, it's got the game corner, it's got a bunch of secrets to find, first of which is in one of the underground paths that lets you get around the city a little easier. Down here you can find a couple of trainers, and this is also where somebody lost their coin case apparently, and you know what that means. It's gambling time. I bet the coin case belongs to this guy. He was apparently trying to cheat at the slots using his Pokemon. I'm actually interested in how that works. So he's got, like, Magnemite, right? Did something with a magnet to mess with the electronics. Oh, a Grimer! How do you cheat at slots with a Grimer? Do you, like, melt the slots or something? I don't know. At any rate, you can find the coin case right here, and there is also a hair salon for your Pokemon, even the ones that don't technically have hair. I don't know how that works. So, also in Goldenrod City is the radio tower, with a suspicious-looking fellow standing right in front of it. Ignore him for now. If you answer 5 questions on this quiz, you will win the radio card, which will allow you to listen to the radio. And the radio is something that I actually really like. I looked up how it works, and it turns out that the radio can do a lot of things, including affect the random encounters if you play it and then start walking around the grass. It's really nice. So this quiz is really easy. Interestingly, the questions are different in Crystal version, but the pattern of answers, as in how many yeses and how many nos, those are the same in all 3 versions. So if you know the answers in Gold or Silver versions, then you already know the answers in Crystal version as well. It's funny. Also, exclusively in Crystal version, there is another radio card you can acquire. If you talk to this girl, Buena, she will give you the blue card, which allows you to create your own Digimon. I mean, it allows you to, basically once a day you can listen to the radio for the password, and then if you say the password to her in person, you earn a point, and those points can be exchanged for prizes. Not much of interest on the prize list, but I'm going to show it right here. I think the most interesting thing is the nugget, because it essentially means you get 5,000 Pokédollars for every 3 days that you give the password. There's really not much else on that list that I'm interested in. I mean, a single nugget could buy you 4 Ultra Balls, seriously. And now for the most annoying part of any Pokemon game, the casino. Yes, the casinos work just like they did in Generation 1. You buy some coins, you risk them on the slots, or you just buy the coins directly and exchange those for all of the fabulous prizes. And there are some actual good prizes up there that you actually don't need many coins in order to get, but I'm still going to show off the games, because we actually have a new gambling game. It is a sort of card game where you guess what the card is going to be. You can guess a particular suit, you can guess the rank, and you can guess multiple ranks or suits with varying degrees of payout if you are successful. This game doesn't really have as much payout potential as the slots do, which are still there, but it's easier to grind coins this way because your chances of success actually go up every time a card is drawn. However, the deck will be shuffled and you'll be back to square one. You know, trying this out again actually makes me yearn for that minigame they added in the international versions of this game's remake, but I digress. Slot machines are still here, they still don't make any sense. So, honestly, you're better off going with my preference, which is to not grind coins at all and bust out the good old Game Shark. How else did I get 10,000 coins? Now I'm going to exchange them for prizes. Though, there's really only one Pokemon that I actually want out of the prize pool for this game. It is the Abra, which only costs 200 coins, which equates to 4,000 Pokédollars if you just buy the coins directly. Abra became seriously good in Gold and Silver, you have no idea. Also available is Ekans, which I think in this version of the game can only be found here, and Dratini I think is very rare to find anywhere else, so you can get it very early if you grind coins, or grind the money to pay for it. I guess you could say I didn't need to cheat that many coins. It's not like I spent more than 3,000. So in Crystal version, they actually changed the prize pool. Instead of Ekans, they now offer Cubone, which is far superior, a very good Pokemon to find this early in the game, and the most expensive prize is now a very rare Pokemon. Say it with me, ladies and gentlemen, Wobbuffet! That is how they say it in the show, isn't it? Wobbuffet's a very gimmicky Pokemon, but I'm sure he'll have his uses. So, we leave the game corner, and now it's time to head to the department store because there's a lot of items to buy, and some interesting people to talk to as well. So first and foremost, if you talk to this girl, it enables an option called Mystery Gift. I think I will have to demonstrate that later, I can't really talk about it at the moment. So, there are some TMs available at the shop. The TM for Headbutt is available if you picked it up earlier, so you can buy it over and over again in case you deleted the move. And also available are the 3 Elemental Punch TMs, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, and Fire Punch. They are all very useful, and I'm actually going to sell off some junk in order to be able to afford the other ones. See, the Abra that I got at the Game Corner, you can actually teach it the Elemental Punch moves, and as you know from my brief rant about Hitmonchan in the Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow playthrough, Hitmonchan is not good with these punching moves because they are special attacks, and Hitmonchan has very low special, but Abra has a very high special attack. I mean, this is just amazing. They made Abra start at level 10, and you can teach it actual attack moves with very good coverage, no less. Abra is going to be very easy to raise into a strong Kadabra later on. You also saw me teach Heracross Fury Cutter, that'll be important later. Silver's up here as well, but for a different reason. He's going to trade this NPC, a Drowsy, for a Machop. You cannot find Machop in the wild, so this is a very good trade at the moment. Mostly because the gym in Goldenrod City is a normal type gym, so having a fighting type is very, very useful, and this particular Machop, I'm pretty sure its stats are consistent on every playthrough, so this is going to be the same Machop no matter how many times you reset for it. Which is actually very good because this Machop has a number of properties that make it very good in the gym later, so this is a very good trade to pick up. Silver also taught his Croconaw how to Ice Punch, which will give it some very much needed coverage. Now Croconaw can take on grass types if he so chooses. One last thing I want to go over before we get to the gym. In the basement of the Goldenrod department store, you can find some items lying around. There might be boxes in the way, but they actually move every time you use the elevator, so keep going up and down the elevator and eventually you can pick up all the items. The Ultra Ball is the most important one, I think. Anyways, now it's time for the moment you've all been waiting for, the Goldenrod City Gym, the interior of which actually looks like a Clefairy if you piece together all of the tiles. It's really nice. Now, people often regard Goldenrod City's gym leader as one of the hardest in the entire series, and to be honest, it's because they gave Whitney's Miltank way too much credit. To be honest, I'm not convinced the developers created a very difficult fight entirely by accident, but at least this battle serves the purpose of communicating to the player, hey, it's not just about attacking with your strongest Pokemon, you need to come up with a plan sometimes. Whitney has 2 Pokemon. One of them is a Clefairy, which can randomly pull any move in the entire game, so it is a bit of a luck-driven battle. But the Miltank is even more infamous. It's bulky, it has the ability to heal itself, and it has a move that gets stronger and stronger the longer the battle goes on, so you're incentivized to kill it before that happens. But it's so bulky that it might not do that, and it also has the ability to infatuate your Pokemon with Attract. This is a status condition similar to Confusion, you just randomly lose half your attacks. Now then, there are 3 strategies that I came up with in order to deal with Miltank. The first is using Fury Cutter. Fury Cutter doubles in power every time you use it, so you can use it multiple times against Clefairy. It'll take a couple turns to take down Clefairy with Fury Cutter because the move's power has to build up, but after 4 turns of using Fury Cutter, you will eventually knock out Clefairy. I guess the only danger here is if Clefairy decides to metronome something really dangerous, like self-destruct or whatever. But once Clefairy's down, your powered-up Fury Cutter can take down Miltank in a single hit. Miltank likes to use a move called Rollout, which is actually a Rock-type move, so anybody who picked Cyndaquil is in a bit of trouble if they try to use it here. If you manage to beat Miltank quickly, Rollout is never an issue. The second strategy I have involves the Machop that Silver traded a Drowsy for. Machop is a fighting type, so naturally it's a perfect fit for this normal type gym. You can train it off of all of the trainers inside the gym, and you'll even get an EXP boost because this is a traded Machop after all. And though you still have to deal with the randomness of Clefairy's metronome, when you actually get to Miltank, you'll find that its attract move no longer works, because attract only works on members of the opposite gender, and this Machop is always a female. Now, that's gotta be a surprise, right? Trading for a Machop, which is a bodybuilding Pokemon, only to find that it's a girl somehow. Of course, this Clefairy did not play nice, it managed to roll Nightshade. But another thing that's really great about this Machop is that it comes holding a Goldberry, which is a hold item that restores 30 HP. Goldberries are very, very nice this early in the game. They do eventually lose their flair because at the later levels of play, you've got hundreds and hundreds of HP. Restoring 30 is not going to be worth that much. Oh, and another really great thing about Machop, it's fighting type. Fighting type resists rock, so you're only taking half the usual amount of damage from rollout. Of course, Miltank does have another move in Stomp, which is normal type and can inflict flinch, but if it uses rollout, it's actually locked into that move for 5 turns. Seriously, this Machop is such a hard counter to this fight. You guys were handed the key to victory all along and you never took it. Like seriously, what were you complaining about this entire time? I'm starting to think that Clefairy is a bigger threat than Miltank, because stuff like this can happen. Metronome and self-destruct. Yeah. That did happen on one of my attempts at this fight. But seriously though, in Crystal version, the Abra that you get from the game corner only starts at level 5, and the guy you trade Machop for now wants Abra instead of Drowsy, so I guess they tried to nerf Machop in that manner. Instead, however, I'm going to use a different Pokemon against Miltank. You can see that I was trying to use Cubone. Cubone's pretty good, but for this battle, I'm going to switch over to Wobbuffet. As I mentioned, if Miltank decides to roll out, it's locked into that move for 5 turns, so I already know what it's going to do. Wobbuffet's gimmick is that it knows no direct damage moves. It instead has 2 moves that counter particular kinds of attacks. This Miltank only knows physical attacks, so you can use the counter move to always deal double the damage that gets dealt to you, and as rollout gets stronger and stronger, the counter attack damage is going to get stronger and stronger as well. There's a bit of risk there if Wobbuffet doesn't have the HP to take another rollout, but in that case you could use Destiny Bond, which will cause the enemy to faint if you do on that turn. So as you can see, it's very easy to milk a cow such as Whitney. For tears. Tears. I wasn't thinking of milking her for anything else, mind you. So yes, after you defeat her, she starts crying, which is really embarrassing. Shoutouts to anyone who came back way, way later in the game because they thought they would have to actually wait in order to get the gym badge from Whitney. In reality, you just talk to her again after talking to that girl just to the south of her. As an additional reward, we get the TM for Attract. If you really want to play your battles that way, you can use it, I guess. But it makes me feel too awkward to consider it myself, so, yeah. Once you are done with the gym, be sure to visit this building in the back. It contains an item that you need to remove a roadblock later. It is a squirt bottle, which we are going to use to squirt on some wood. Yeah. Annoyingly, in Gold and Silver, you can just get the item whenever you want, but in Crystal version, you have to actually run into the tree and then talk to somebody, then you can come back and get the squirt bottle. So, let's move on to the next route. There are a lot of trainers, and not many of them are interesting, but I like the dialogue on this one guy here. Behold my graceful ball dexterity. Yes, ball dexterity. That's what the writer went with. I'm beginning to think whoever wrote this is entirely juvenile. Yes, we know he's talking about a bunch of Voltorb because he's a juggler and jugglers juggle orbs. And for some reason it's a level 2 Voltorb. Like, seriously, you can do so much better than that. Don't you have bigger balls than... Oh my... I can't anymore with this. So, it's just a bunch of Voltorb. This is really easy to pass. Let's move on. So, on this route, if you go the long way around the grass, you can actually pick up another TM. It is the TM for rollout, so now your balls can get rolling. Ah! Okay, moving on to the next area. It is the National Park. This area's grass has been cut in the shape of a giant Pokeball. I give up. Alright, now that my mind is out of the gutter, I just want to say that National Park has one new Pokemon. It is Sunkern, which holds the honor of having the lowest base stat total of all Pokemon across all generations. However, in this game, it starts with Mega Drain, which is actually pretty good. If I had caught this earlier in the game, then it would have been a staple on my team. However, it's only available here and now, and in the afternoon, no less. So, there you have it, Sunkern. Maybe I will use it. I hope I can use it. Another feature of the National Park is that 3 days a week, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, you can take part in the bug catching contest. This contest, I actually really like it a lot. It's basically the Safari Zone, but not terrible. You can only take one of your own Pokemon inside, and then you can use it to fight any of the bugs in the park, and whoever catches the strongest bug is going to be the winner, and first prize is actually a very important item. So here we go. I've chosen my Bellsprout for this, so I can use Sleep Powder, and that's actually important because the way the scoring system for the contest works is that not only are you graded on how strong your Pokemon is, you're also graded in part on how much damage you did to the Pokemon, so the less damage you do, the better your score is going to be. So putting the opponent to sleep is going to be very important. Now this might make it seem like the contest is reliant on chance, but in reality, the park balls that you're provided with do a decent job capturing stuff at half health or more. So really, I'm fine with it. I actually like this contest a whole lot. Since you're only allowed to take one Pokemon into the contest, you have to actually put a lot of thought into how you're going to capture these bugs. And the best part is you can capture as many bugs as you want, and they'll all get registered in the Pokédex. You're just only allowed to keep the one that you take for judging. Really, they could make other contests like this, and I think it would be a lot of fun. Can you imagine a fishing contest? People would actually fish for a change. Anyways, the prize for first place is the Sunstone, a brand new evolution stone that works on all of 2 Pokemon in the entire game. Honestly, I think there are way too many evolution stones in this game, but what can you do? I'm gonna complete the contest multiple times to get the stones I need, and the contest is very much fun to me anyways. Not quite as much fun is the 1 in 100 chance encounter on Route 35. It is Yanma, a new bug that Bugsy also does not have and also does not show up in the bug catching contest where it would have been welcome. All of the bug catching contest Pokemon are Gen 1 Pokemon. So again, they're not doing a good job showing off Johto Pokemon, and Yanma is also not really worth anything anyways. So about that weird tree, if you come here with a squirt bottle, you can spray it on the morning wood. I mean, I'm doing this at midnight, so it is technically morning. Anyways, the tree turns out to be a Pokemon. It is Sudowoodo. Get it? It's a fake tree. Sudowoodo. It's also rock solid, because it's rock type. You know, it actually starts out with a decent number of moves, so I do wonder if it's viable for use later on in the game, but we're getting it pretty late. It's not really the time to be adding a new rock type to my team. But oh well, we'll see how it goes with this guy. I might use him. So with Sudowoodo out of the way, you can actually go back to Violet City if you want, or you can go forward to Ecruteak City, but whatever you do, be sure to talk to this guy first. He's got an important TM for you. It is another move with an out-of-battle effect. Rock Smash is a pretty decent fighting type move for this early in the game, but it can also shatter rocks that are in your way, and those rocks can actually spawn more wild encounters. So as if headbutting and fishing weren't enough, now you've got Rock Smash encounters to worry about. This is just nuts. Anyways, moving on to Route 37, there's another new encounter here. It is Stantler, the deer. Evidently they didn't decide to go very far beyond deer. Honestly, there's not anything interesting about this guy either. He's just a normal type that wasn't in Whitney's gym for some reason. Are you noticing a theme here? Like, all of these new Johto Pokemon, I can't really say much about them. I looked up their movesets, there's just nothing there that doesn't require a TM to be useful. Alright, I suppose I should be making an actual effort to try and use Johto Pokemon. I mean, I've been saying that I should do that all this time, but unless I come up with something devious, I don't think there's really anything I can do. Okay, I think it's high time I made a commitment. This time, I'm gonna do something devious in this video. You'll see. Anyways, there are some apricorn trees here in case you want to get them and then backtrack all the way to Kurt in order to have some custom Pokeballs made. These 3 colors of apricorn all make balls that I think have their own niches, but are not super helpful to be carrying around like 30 of them at all times or anything. And oh gosh, the inventory limits are back. Yeah, they put all of your balls, key items, and TMs into their own pockets, but you still have a limit of 20 regular items, so still gonna have to fuss with that at times. Anyways, we enter the Ecruteak City Pokemon Center, and a familiar face greets us. It's Bill, the guy who built the storage system that we've been using, and he's ready to announce that he's completed a time capsule that lets you trade Pokemon with the past. Just drop in this bombshell. He perfected time travel. Like, wow. And he warns us not to send any Pokemon into the past that didn't exist back then because it would break the system. He has no idea, honestly. But yeah, now you can trade with Generation 1. And you actually have to do that to complete the Pokédex, but I'm gonna use the Stadium 2 functions to transfer the Pokemon that way. That'll be easier. So yeah, time travel exists in the Pokemon universe, and it's used exclusively to trade with the past, which has gotta cause so many issues with the space-time continuum, and yeah, they just ignore all of that. It's just an in-universe explanation for why you can trade it with Generation 1. So let's head into this building. It is a dance hall, and there are 5 dancers known as the Kimono Girls. They're also trainers, and we have to beat all of them to get an item from this guy. It's actually a plot-critical item, so I don't know how you're supposed to know to come in here and do that, but hey. The Kimono Girls are interesting because the remakes of Gold and Silver gave them a much larger role in the story than they have here. Here you just beat the 5 of them and then you're done with them, but in the remakes they actually do more with them, which I actually like. The remakes of this game are really, really good, and I recommend checking them out as well. So, the other gimmick of the Kimono Girls is that they all use the 5 evolutions, as they are called. Yes, there are in fact 2 new evolutions for Eevee. One of them is Espeon, and the interesting thing about the trainer using Espeon is that she appears in a couple episodes of the show as well, using her same old Espeon along with the other Kimono Girls. However, the remake swapped her Espeon for one of the other evolutions, so the remakes actually aren't accurate to the show anymore, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, not that they need to be, but it was kind of cool to have an anime character based directly on a random trainer from the games. It's kind of nice. Anyways, the Kimono Girls are interesting. Each of their Pokemon give out 700 EXP each, which is kind of a lot. And they also give out a lot of money, 1,200 for each of them. So, I think we're getting to the point where there's quite a lot of EXP going around, and this was also the battle where Abra evolved into Kadabra. So yes, when you have actual attack moves, it's very easy to actually level up, although I did switch into Quilava there in order to finish off that particular fight. So now I've got Kadabra, and he's got a Psychic-type move, so that's going to be very useful for the next gym. So one of the Pokemon in here actually introduces an entirely new type. Umbreon here is a Dark-type Pokemon. They were created more or less to balance out Psychic types, which proved very powerful in Generation 1. So, Dark types are immune to Psychic attacks, and Dark type moves are also super effective against Ghost and Psychic moves, so that's going to be something we should keep in mind for this upcoming gym as well, because it's actually a Ghost type gym. Anyways, for defeating the Kimono Girls, you get HMO3, oddly enough, kind of an important HM, and Silver is definitely going to use it to teach Croconaw to surf immediately, because it's still a very, very good move. Even though you can't surf without the gym badge from Ecruteak Gym, it's still a really nice move to have. You know, I'm starting to get the feeling that the designers are relying a little too much on the players going into every building and talking to everybody to find all of the important things. But maybe this was just how RPGs were designed back then. This was a long time ago, after all. And still, it's not really that bad. You do find some cool things here and there. But I would prefer finding the cool things in the dungeons when I explore, like with this dungeon, for example. As soon as you enter the Burned Tower, which is what this dungeon is called, you're immediately accosted by your rival. Yes, he appears immediately and challenges you to a battle, because he doesn't want you getting at the legendary Pokemon that are apparently inside this tower. Now, in Crystal version, they changed this dungeon drastically. For one thing, it actually looks like a burned tower, and when you enter this time, a new character appears. He is called Uceen. Maybe it's supposed to mean Uceen Suicune, because that's the Pokemon he is after. In addition to Uceen, the gym leader Morty is also here, and he's actually doing something outside of his gym for a change. That's the first time that's happened in this franchise. although he doesn't really do all that much. I'm not sure if this event is mandatory in Gold and Silver, but it would be very strange if they just let you skip a rival fight like that. So anyways, in Crystal version, the rival is in the center of the first floor of the tower. And the tower's design is also very different in Gold and Silver, so I will be getting to that. But we have a rival battle, so let's rumble for the moment, shall we? Ah yes, his team is more or less the same as before, just stronger. The Ghastly evolved into a Haunter, but it's more or less the same thing. Now, unfortunately, I kind of goofed here. See, I wanted this to be Cubone's moment, because Cubone, being a ground type, is super effective against 3 of the rival's Pokemon here. The Haunter, the Magnemite, and in Crystal version, the Quilava, because I picked Chikorita. Unfortunately, the rival's team also has a lot of confusion moves, so Cubone unfortunately ended up getting confused and KO'd, and also the Haunter still has Lick, which inflicts paralysis. So it's Wobbuffet's turn yet again, and luckily the rival does not seem to know what Mirror Coat does. Mirror Coat is the special attack version of Counter. It counters special moves instead of physical moves, and Quilava here just keeps using Ember over and over and over again, and then Mirror Coat pays him back double. These moves are not affected by types in any way, so even though Mirror Coat is a psychic type, it's still gonna work against dark types, for example. And as for Silver, well, he taught Croconaw Ice Punch precisely for this fight. After putting Bayleaf to sleep, it is a simple matter to Ice Punch Bayleaf to its unconsciousness. I keep forgetting they don't die. And for Gold, he just kinda runs over the enemy team here. Like, Quilava just burns through the Zubat, which is another Pokemon that the rival has, and that's that. He ended this fight with Zubat for some reason. So apparently there's no challenge in fighting me even though I just won, unless he's talking about someone else. What a sore loser. Alright, let's actually explore the tower. So the Burn Tower is where you're actually going to be required to use Rock Smash if you want to get all the items and stuff. And actually there's another item that's hidden behind another HM, so you're going to have to come back later for that. So I'm going to teach Rock Smash too. I was a little indecisive here. I eventually decided to teach it to Heracross because it is a fighting type move, and Heracross is part fighting type. So here we go. We can smash through rocks, and unfortunately all my repels wore out as I was gathering all the items. And we also have a couple trainers exclusively in Gold and Silver versions. This guy is called Fire Breather Dick. That's literally his name. I didn't make that up. You just have a fire breather named that for some reason. But what I like about him is, he mentions that he gets covered in white ash, and then his palette in the overworld actually changes to reflect that. I always thought that was really cool. Which actually leads me to believe that the 3 Pokemon that you find in the basement were covered in white ash also, until you wake them up and they shake it off. That's my takeaway at any rate. So that kind of looked a little bit weird. You just encounter 3 whatever those are and then they run off without much context. So let's see if Crystal version improves that scene a little bit. After beating the rival, it apparently creates a random hole, you fall in, and then the rival, being the rival, he just says the most insulting thing ever. Dude, really? So when you approach those 3 Pokemon this time, they actually have unique sprites. These are the 3 legendary beasts, and one of them was on the cover of Crystal version, Suicune to be specific. I'm not sure if I'm getting these pronunciations right at all. By the way, Easter egg for you Fire Emblem fans, you want to know what Entei is Japanese for? Flame Emperor, yeah! And there's also Raikou, which nobody cares about. Did Raikou ever get, like, a movie or anything? I remember the other 2 getting movies, but Raikou just got nothing. Anyways, we'll be catching up with the Beast Trio eventually. See, the gimmick of these guys is after you encounter them here, they start roaming around the Johto region more or less at random, and your job is to intercept, ambush, and capture them. That's gonna take a while though. This is not a legendary gimmick that most players actually liked, so they haven't really done it all that much since then. They do it a couple other times in games like Fire Red. Anyways, I really like this part of the game because they actually have lore behind the legendaries that we just encountered. And the way it's written here makes me wonder if we just woke them up from their slumber after they were resurrected by a legendary bird Pokemon, but I don't know if that's what they're meant to imply. At any rate, it's time for the Ecruteak City Gym. It is a ghost-type gym, as I mentioned, and the gimmick of the gym itself is that the floors are invisible and you have to follow the trainer's eyesight in order to find where the invisible bridge is. As for the fights themselves, well, I've basically told you everything you need to know about ghost types after all that time Silver spent with Ghastly. They're still weak against psychic types, and ghost type moves are still super effective against psychic types, but Lick is still really weak. The only annoying thing about Lick is that it inflicts paralysis. Other nifty moves include Curse, which I have demonstrated, and your opponents in this gym can very much use it, but it's really only a threat if they decide to use Mean Look, because that stops you from switching off of Curse. And also, throughout the battles in this gym, my Bellsprout evolved into Weepin' Bell. Who knows if I'm going to be able to evolve it into Victory Bell, because getting a Leaf Stone is actually really annoying. I looked this up and I was so flabbergasted. But at any rate, I'm going to retreat back to the Pokemon Center and heal up before starting the battle with Morty, the gym leader. I just want to mention, by the way, nowhere in this gym do you see the one single new ghost type introduced in Generation 2. It's all the Ghastly line, which might be a bit boring, but I think it actually makes for a tough battle with Morty. I consider him to be a tougher gym leader than even Whitney, which might surprise you guys. The thing is, against Morty's Gengar, he really just has all bases covered. I don't really know any consistent strategies to deal with Gengar, other than just relying on chance to beat him, because you'll see what he does. Morty uses a Ghastly, 2 Haunter, and a Gengar. The Ghastly just licks, the Haunters just use Curse, which can sometimes result in them KOing themselves. The tough part is Gengar. First of all, he has Shadow Ball, which is an actually good, damaging Ghost-type move. It's super effective against your Ghosts, it's super effective against your Psychic types, so he's got that covered. Against anybody else, he uses Hypnosis and Dream Eater, which is actually pretty bad because, if you remember from Generation 1, Gengar is very fast. He manages to outspeed everything I was using, and I couldn't really find anything faster than him, so what happens is, he's going to use Hypnosis, and if you get put to sleep, you're going to get hit by Dream Eater, and even if you cure the sleep status, and thereby waste Gengar's turn, because he still uses Dream Eater, but nothing happens, you're basically right back where you started because he's going to use Hypnosis again anyways, and this will also happen if you try to switch out, and Gengar also has Mean Look, which will stop you from switching out in case you were thinking of trying that. So really, the best strategy is to actually use a Dark type, but I can't really think of any Dark types that are available right now. They would resist Shadow Ball, and they would be immune to Dream Eater, and probably Hypnosis as well, I'm not sure. You can see that the strategy for Gold and Silver wound up being to just hope that Hypnosis misses, because its accuracy is not perfect. So if you keep curing the sleep status, and mind you, you don't have a Poke Flute this time around, so no infinitely curing sleep status for you, eventually Hypnosis is going to miss and you can get an attack through. Really, there has to be a way to avoid Hypnosis somehow, like make it guaranteed, but I don't really think there's any way to do that. No way to do that at all. So what's Chris gonna do? I see she has Stantler, that avoids Shadow Ball, but Stantler's still gonna get put to sleep, right? Wait, why is Stantler poisoned? Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Don't tell me. You're telling me this girl ran all the way back to National Park, got Stantler poisoned by a Weedle, and then came back? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no, I get it now. Listen to this, okay? If you have a status effect, you can't be hit with another status effect besides Confusion. So, because Stantler is poisoned, he can't be put to sleep by Hypnosis, and therefore Dream Eater is useless, and Shadow Ball is useless. This Gengar can't do anything to Stantler! I don't believe it. That should not work. Why does that work? That's the stupidest. Coming in with a preset status conditions. I told you Chris was on drugs, didn't I? Well, with that out of the way, and Morty probably thinking, what the heck just happened to me there? We earn the Fog Badge, which allows us to use Surf outside of battle, and we are also given the TM for Shadow Ball, which is pretty nice. You can put it on a lot of Pokemon other than Ghost types, so that's a good thing. There's only 2 Ghost-type evolution lines in this entire game to begin with. I'm gonna be stuck on that strategy for quite a while. That's gonna do it for this episode of Pokemon Gold, Silver, and Crystal. I need to think about what just happened. I'll see you next time, guys.